Yesterday, China has blocked the designation of Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar as a global or international terrorist on the ground that China needs more time to examine sanction requests. This resolution was tabled by countries like US, UK and France in the aftermath of the Paloma terror attack in which more than 40 Indian security forces lost their lives. We have Mr. Suhas Chakma, Director of the Rights and Risk Analysis Group, to discuss this issue. So Mr. Chakma, what does this mean for India?
This basically means that China has at least 9 months to decide on the request to impose sanction on Masood Azhar, the chief of the Jaish-e-Mohammed. It's a technical move, and as per the rules of the UN Security Council of this Sanctions Committee, when such a request is made, the requesting member state, which is China, has about 6 months to decide on it, and if it cannot decide in 6 months' time, at the last minute it once again can request to seek an extension, which is a period of 3 months, and thereafter resolution lapses unless somebody brings the issue once again before the UN Security Council. It's on the same ground. Actually, China had earlier blocked the resolution to designate Masood Azhar as as a global terrorist in March 2016 after the Pulwama airbase attack in January 2016 by the Jaish-e-Mohammed. India once again tried to bring a resolution in 2017. Once again, China made a technical request saying that they need to study the evidence, and the evidence provided by India was not sufficient. So if you look at the patterns, you would see that once China blocks the resolution on technical ground or holds it on technical ground, it basically has a natural death, because by that time those who have been sponsoring the resolution actually lose the steam to move the resolution once again. And I think there is a growing frustration at the international level, because China has been consistently and effectively blocking the adoption of the resolution. So if you are a country which is sponsoring the resolution and you know that the China has a veto power and it can block the resolution without being accountable to anybody, obviously you don't want to move again and again only to be rebuffed by China. So there is growing frustration at the UN, at the UN Security Council, and of course I think the sentiments of India is completely understandable.
So what sanction measures are taken once a person or an organization is designated as a global terrorist or a terror organization?
See, once the Sanction Committee designates a particular person or an organization as a terrorist organization, then all the members of the United Nations have to follow 3 measures. They have to take 3 measures effectively. One is with respect to freeze of assets. So it also means that you cannot raise funds. Second relates to travel ban, basically to restrict the mobility of the members of these organizations or the person who is designated. It has significant impact in certain cases. Then of course there is an embargo on arms, selling, supplying, procurement, etc. I think what makes the difference is the fact that in the UN system, when the resolution is adopted by the General Assembly or any other body, UN obviously cannot enforce because it doesn't have the military power. So it only has some kind of moral value. But when a resolution is adopted by the UN Security Council, obviously the Security Council is the only body which has the enforcement mechanisms. So all the member states of the United Nations are actually required to take measures to respect and comply with the UN Security Council resolution. So therefore it has far more wider consequences than any other resolutions at the United Nations. And this Sanctions Committee, being the specialized sanction committee to deal with terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, Daesh, then obviously this is the appropriate forum where India would seek to ban this kind of organizations.
Let's then take with China on this. Is it a principled stand or a hypocritical one?
But China's stand on this issue is a hypocritical one, and it's a double standard of China. If you look at the UN Sanctions Committee's action on this issue, you would see that Jaish-e-Mohammed was banned in 2001 itself. So if you can ban the organization, why can't you ban the chief of the organization? Obviously all the actions are being done at the behest or at the instruction of the chief. So therefore China's stand on this issue is actually a a hypocritical one. And also, if you look at the China's position with respect to designation or so-called designation of terrorists, it identifies. It tries to identify His Holiness Dalai Lama as a terrorist. It tries to identify Rabia Kadir, the president of the All Uyghur Congress, and Daklon Isa, the general secretary of the All Uyghur Congress, as a terrorist, despite these individuals being very democratic, peaceful, and actually only undertaking campaign through peaceful and democratic means. And whenever these individuals travel outside the country where they are residing, China always makes an Interpol request on frivolous grounds, saying that these are terrorists, and these guys are harassed and sometimes even thrown out of the UN buildings. So if you look at the conduct of China and the way it identifies the peaceful or promoter of democracy or apostle of peace like Dalai Lama as terrorist. On the other hand, if you look at Masood Azhar's role in carrying out so many terror attacks established, and it has been even admitted by Parvez Musharraf that Jaish-e-Mohammed even tried to kill him at a certain point of time. So therefore, what evidence do you require more? And therefore, if you look at China's stand, it has no moral standing whatsoever. It's a hypocritical one.
So what are the options left for India now?
See, I think India ought to realize that the resolution at the UN Security Council to impose sanctions on, or to identify Masood Azhar as a global terrorist has reached basically the saturation point, because you had the Pulwama attack, you had the Pathankot attack, you had the Uri attack, and despite all these attacks, you could not get the support of China, which has taken a stand based on its own interest, which is known to all. So therefore, I think if India is looking forward to impose sanctions on Masood Azhar, it will not be successful because of the vested interest of China. So therefore, I think the time has come for India to realize that it will not gain anything by exposing the hypocrisy of China, and China can withstand this kind of exposure given its interest with Pakistan, and possibly also it is not necessarily be happy with the presence of His Holiness Dalai Lama in India. So its stand is not moved by moral value. But if India is not going to be successful at the UN Security Council, I think that is not the end of the world. I think what India ought to realize is the fact that Jaish-e-Mohammed has been banned by United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Indonesia, and many other countries. So India actually, as a measure, ought to move around in the neighborhood, whether it's South Asia, like Nepal. You can go far beyond like Afghanistan, Iran, and elsewhere, to ban Jaish-e-Mohammed, and asking basically to implement the same measures which the Security Council resolution shall entail. So if these countries enact legislations or pass necessary orders with respect to travel ban, assets freeze, and non-supply of arms or ammunitions to Jaish-e-Mohammed, it will have the same impact. I think I would say if these countries adopt or enact this kind of legislation at the national level, it will have far wider impact than the UN Security Council resolution. Then Pakistan will feel that they are actually not supported in the neighborhood, and China will also feel that they are not supported by the countries in the neighborhood, because the war against terrorism is a global war. Everybody has to participate in it. So therefore, I think India has to change its strategy. If it doesn't change its strategy, it will feel frustrated and it will not be able to counter Jaish-e-Mohammed. I think the time has come for India, to take this kind of domestic measures. If India is so serious with the Pulwama attack, why couldn't it ask, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, to take measures, legal measures to ban Jaish-e-Mohammed in their countries? And I'm sure they will be happy to do it. And because if they do not do it, does it mean that they support Jaish-e-Mohammed? Obviously not. So I think India has to move away from the UN Security Council, which is a rotten one, because only the 5 members, we have 5 permanent members of the Security Council has veto. So you cannot go, or you have no mechanisms, to outvote China. Once it vetoes, that's the end of the decision making process. So India ought to realize the futility of moving the UN Security Council and the potential it has to move in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Chakma, for joining us. Thanks everyone for watching. Please subscribe to the show.